61. The Husband Punished. Qing of Wintang was a young fellow of some literary reputation who lived next door to a Mr. Shen, their studios being separated only by a low wall. One evening, Shen was crossing a piece of waste ground when he heard a young girl crying among some pine trees hard by. He approached and saw a girl hanging from one of the branches, as if its owner was just on the point of hanging herself. Shen asked her what was the matter, and then she brushed away her tears and said, "My mother has gone away and left me in charge of my brother-in-law. But he's a scamp and won't continue to take care of me. And now there is nothing left for me but to die." Hereupon the girl began crying again, and Shen untied the girl and bade her go and find herself a husband, to which she said there was very little chance of that. And then Shen offered to take her to his own home, an offer which she very gladly accepted. Soon after they arrived, his neighbor Qing thought he heard a noise and jumped over the wall to have a peep, when lo and behold, at the door of Shen's house stood this young lady, who immediately ran away into the garden on seeing Qing. The two young men pursued her, but without success, and were obliged to return each to his own room, Qing being greatly astonished to find the same girl now standing at his door. On addressing the young lady, she told him that his neighbor's destiny was too poor a one for her, and that she came from Shantung, and that her name was Ashia. She finally agreed to take up her residence with Qing, but after a few days, finding that a great number of his friends were constantly calling, she declared it was too noisy a place for her, and that she would only visit him in the evening. This she continued to do for a few days, telling him in reply to his inquiries that her home was not very far off. One evening, however, she remarked that their present liaison was not very creditable to either, that her father was a Mandarin on the western frontier, and that she was about to set out with her mother to join him, begging him meanwhile to make a formal request for the celebration of their nuptials, in order to prevent them from being thus separated. She further said that they started in 10 days or so, and then Qing began to reflect that if he married her, she would have to take her place in the family, and that would make his first wife jealous. So he determined to get rid of the latter, and when she came in, he began to abuse her right and left. His wife bore it as long as she could, but at length cried out it were better she should die. Upon which Qing advised her not to bring trouble on them all like that, but to go back to her own home. He then drove her away, his wife asking all the time what she had done to be sent away like this after 10 years of blameless life with him. Qing, however, paid no heed to her entreaties, and when he had got rid of her, he set to work at once to get the house whitewashed and made generally clean, himself being on the tiptoe of expectation for the arrival of Miss Ashia. But he waited and waited, and no Ashia came. She seemed gone like a stone dropped into the sea. Meanwhile, emissaries came from his late wife's family begging him to take her back, and when he flatly refused, she married a gentleman of position named Shaya, whose property adjoined Qing's, and who had long been at feud with him in consequence, as is usual in such cases. This made Qing furious, but he still hoped that Ashia would come, and tried to console himself in this way. Yet more than a year passed away, and still no signs of her, until one day, at the Festival of the Sea Spirits, he saw among the crowds of girls passing in and out one who very much resembled Ashia. Qing moved towards her, following her as she threaded her way through the crowd as far as the temple gate, where he lost sight of her altogether, to his great mortification and regret. Another 6 months passed away, when one day he met a young lady dressed in red, accompanied by an old manservant, and riding on a black mule. It was Ashia. So he asked the old man the name of his young mistress, and learned from him that she was the second wife of a gentleman named Chang, having been married to him about a fortnight previously. Qing now thought she could not be Asia, but just then the young lady, hearing them talking, turned her head, and Qing saw that he was right. And now, finding that she had actually married another man, he was overwhelmed with rage and cried out in a loud voice, "Asia, Asia, why did you break faith?" The servant here objected to his mistress being thus addressed by a stranger, and was squaring up to Qing when Asia bade him desist, and raising her veil replied, "And you, faithless one, how do you dare meet my gaze?" "You are the faithless one," said Qing, "not I." "To be faithless to your wife is worse than being faithless to me," rejoined Asia. "If you behaved like that to her, how should I have been treated at your hands? Because of the fair fame of your ancestors and the honors gained by them, I was willing to ally myself with you. But now that you have discarded your wife, your thread of official advancement has been cut short in the realms below, and Mr. Shin is to take the place that should have been yours at the head of the examination list. As for myself, I am now part of the Chang family. Think no more of me." Qing hung his head and could make no reply, and Asia whipped up her mule and disappeared from his sight, leaving him to return home disconsolate. At the forthcoming examination, everything turned out as she had predicted. Mr. Shin was at the top of the list, and he himself was thrown out. It was clear that his luck was gone. At 40, he had no wife, and was so poor that he was glad to pick up a meal where he could. One day he called on Mr. Chang, who treated him well and kept him there for the night. And while there, Chang's second wife saw him and asked her husband if his guest's name wasn't Qing. "It is," said he. "How could you guess that?" "Well," replied she, "before I married you, I took refuge in his house, and he was then very kind to me. Although he has now sunk low, yet his ancestors' influence on the family fortunes is not yet exhausted. Besides, he is an old acquaintance of yours, and you should try and do something for him." Chang consented, and having first given him a new suit of clothes, kept him in the house several days. At night, a slave girl came to him with 20 ounces of silver for him, and Mrs. Chang, who was outside the window, said, "This is a trifling return for your past kindness to me. Go and get yourself a good wife. The family luck is not yet exhausted, but will descend to your sons and grandchildren. Do not behave like this again, and so shorten your term of life." Qing thanked her and went home, using 10 ounces of silver to procure a concubine from a neighboring family who was very ugly and ill-tempered. However, she bore him a son, and he by and by graduated as doctor. Mr. Chang became vice president of the Board of Civil Office, and at his death, Ashaya attended the funeral. But when they opened her chair on its return home, she was gone, and then people knew for the first time that she was not mortal flesh and blood. Alas, for the perversity of mankind, rejecting the old and craving for the new. And then when they come back to the familiar nest, the birds have all flown. Thus does heaven punish such people.
Thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more excellent content.